What is going on, world? What's up, YouTube? It's Zero here. Today I'm bringing you guys a brand new episode of the 8 Below Show. Welcome everyone to 8 Below. Thanks for being here, guys, to the best gaming-related show here on YouTube. And I'm super excited about our episode here today. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's get into it. What was beloved as one of those franchises that so many people absolutely were passionate about was Fallout, guys, a series that has spanned since 1997 to basically present day. And I want to talk about in this first segment of the show what happened to this franchise, because I think it comes down to really one bad game, one significant issue, and ultimately what we're hoping for is that this doesn't cost the rest of the entire franchise a serious, downfall, that being a limbo state that we're really hoping that Bethesda decides to continue making these games, even though Fallout 76 was such a badly recepted kind of game. So let's talk about what happened to Fallout as a whole, guys. And obviously, guys, if you look at the release timeline of Fallout, you can see that the first Fallout started in 1997 is when it released, and then a year later you got Fallout 2, so basically back-to-back games. A few years later is when you had Fallout Tactics, Brotherhood of Steel, which some of these guys obviously were like side stories and weren't like, very much so like a part of the main story of Fallout. Fallout 3 didn't come out until 2008, so a number of years after Fallout Tactics and Fallout Brotherhood of Steel. And then Fallout New Vegas was another side story in the Fallout franchise. Now, lots of people did not like New Vegas. I didn't like it myself. I thought Fallout 3 was very good, and this was the pinnacle of this franchise, in my personal opinion, is when you had Fallout 1, 2, and 3. You're talking a great 3-game stretch there. Some of the best games. Fallout 3 was highly regarded as one of the best games, of course, that year, and has been considered one of the best games ever, as well as Fallout 4. Fallout 4, guys, was very much so a continuation of what they were doing as far as Bethesda is concerned, and doing a really good job of that. And the reception of Fallout 4 was incredible as well. So you're talking, guys, 4 games here that did really well. Now, I will say this. Between Fallout 1 and 3, you had some, 3 great games, and then, of course, the side stories, and then, of course, Fallout New Vegas, which was a side as well. And then there were some people who really enjoyed New Vegas, others really didn't like it. People thought in 2010, though, that the series was starting to kind of become a little bit flat and was kind of going a little bit downhill. But then, after Fallout Shelter and Fallout 4 came out, the series went right back to where it was. So it kind of peaked with Fallout 3, came down a little bit with Fallout New Vegas, and went back up with Fallout 4. And then, of course, in 2018, so Fallout 4, guys, and Fallout Shelter came out in 2015, and then a few years later, we had Fallout 76, which I think, guys, between New Vegas and Fallout 76, even though Fallout 76 was substantially what I believe is to blame for what happened to this franchise, because you can see from what happened to the franchise, kind of where the franchise began, and then what happened, that being Fallout 76 as well as Fallout New Vegas partially. And then, of course, where is the franchise going now is a very interesting question, because if you look at that timeline and you see exactly where everything kind of like shook up or shaped up here within this franchise, you can see that with Fallout 3, you had a game that went slightly downhill, that being Fallout New Vegas. Then you had Fallout 4 to Fallout 76, which was like that downhill after the incredible incline from Fallout 4, and then Fallout 76 made a serious decline. Now, the question is really all it takes is one game to really hurt a franchise. It takes one game to bring that series back, and that's exactly what I think could happen with Fallout. Now, look, I think that we can argue that Fallout 76 is what really cratered the franchise for the time being. You could say that New Vegas was what started it, and then it just continued, after Fallout 4, even though Fallout 4 was very well received. And then, of course, Fallout, 76. Honestly, guys, you kind of wonder, should they be making side stories anymore? Should they just be making main stories? Because at this point, anytime they've been doing these side stories, it feels like they're just not as widely accepted and not very good reception, so to speak, when it comes to those games or those side stories. Because according to a review aggregator Metacritic, the PC and PlayStation versions of Fallout 76 received mixed or average reviews, while the Xbox One version received generally unfavorable reviews. The numerous negative reviews from critics led Forbes to describe the release of Fallout 76 as a historically bad launch, and to question if Bethesda would consider the property worth saving moving forward. Look, I'm going to say, guys, that they probably will consider the property worth saving just because of the success they've had with Fallout 3, with Fallout 4. All these games have done really well. But you look at all of the bad reception, though, around Fallout 76. It's pretty bad. Game Informer gave it a 6 out of 10, which was pretty high, actually. GameSpot gave it a 4 out of 10. IGN giving it a 5 out of 10. PC Gamer giving it a 60 out of 100. PC Games giving it a 5 out of 10. So really, when you look at this, guys, I mean, really, it's getting average to low reviews, like just bad reviews all the way around. Metacritic, 52 out of 100 on PC, PS4, 53 out of 100, and Xbox One, 49 out of 100. So very mediocre reviews, but I think we can say that it just wasn't good reviews overall. Now, the sales for Fallout 76 upon launch, Fallout 76 debuted at third place in the UK's all-format sales charts, behind Spyro Reignited Trilogy and Red Dead Redemption 2. According to the NPD Group, the game had lower launch sales than either Fallout 4 or Fallout New Vegas. The game saw a price drop in North America less than 1 week after its initial release, with some pundits listing poor sales as a reason for the cut in price. In the respective opening months, the game's physical sales were less than 1/5 of Fallout 4, which is down 82%, while its digital sales were about half of Fallout 4, down 48%. In Japan, the PlayStation 4 version sold 73,489 copies with its debut week, which made it the second best-selling retail game of the week in the country. Superdata estimated that as of the end of 2018, the game had sold 1.4 million digital copies, which is still a lot of copies when you really think about it, but not so much for a Fallout game. Now look, guys, there's a lot of things that I believe went wrong with Fallout 76. Tons of controversies. We'll get into a couple of those. But I really think, guys, what mainly happened here with Fallout 76, other than the controversies, the fact that they made Fallout 76 an online-only game, not really any story mode, the things that really made Fallout amazing in the past, they kind of took away in Fallout 76, making it this mainly a multiplayer, or online experience, and it just didn't work for Fallout. Let's just put it that way. Fallout 76's Power Armor Special Edition drew controversy upon release. Bethesda advertised that the edition would include a canvas duffel bag, but a nylon one was included instead. Responding to customer complaints, Bethesda claimed that the bag had to be changed due to unavailability of materials and initially stated the intention to take no action. The publisher received criticism for not making the change known beforehand, with Eurogamer pointing out that the bag's description on Bethesda's website had only changed to read nylon after complaints had been submitted. Bethesda later offered affected customers free in-game currency of 500 atoms as compensation, equivalent to $5. And then, of course, guys, there was just so many controversies with this game. And, you can watch all that stuff on other YouTubers really covered this when it was going on. I'm not going to go really deep into it, but controversies were a huge part of Fallout 76. Well, let's talk about in September 2019, collectible Nuka-Cola themed Fallout helmets produced by Chronicle Collectibles, of which only 32 of the 20,000 manufactured were sold, were recalled by the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission due to containing high levels of mold and posing a health risk. No incidents or injuries were reported. GameStop, which sold the helmets, notified all customers who had purchased a helmet and offered them a full refund. So it was just one thing after the next, guys. And so, look, adding insult to injury here, not only are you getting bad reviews for Fallout 76, you're getting mad controversies. Let's just put it this way. It tarnished Fallout in a way that has really all of the positive things people aren't even thinking about at this point, because they're looking at the right here and right now, and what we see right here and right now are mad controversies as well as just a lot of course, negative reception. And look, guys, I didn't like Fallout 76 at all. I thought it was the worst game easily in the entire franchise. It makes a Fallout New Vegas look really fun, like look really good, even though I didn't like that game either. So all I'm saying is that I believe Bethesda is going to move this kind of deal delicately with this franchise moving forward. I think we are going to see a Fallout 5 at some point or another, without a doubt. But they just gotta really make the things right that they did wrong with Fallout 76. Go back to the story, go back to the basics. Having multiplayer experiences, co-op experiences are great, but when you only have that in a franchise that's known for the campaign, that might pose as an issue right off the bat. But then on top of all of that, you've got all kinds of other issues like controversies and stuff. That just doesn't help, guys, at the end of the day. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What do you guys think happened to Fallout as a franchise? Was it only Fallout 76? Was it also New Vegas and other games along the way in the franchise? And also, where do you think they're going with the franchise? Do you think a Fallout 5 will come out? I believe there definitely will be, but I'd love to hear from all of you. And for more Fallout content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. Another franchise that I know a lot of people want to see a continuation of, but also want to see the ship turned in the right direction after, of course, the recent release in the franchise, that being Mass Effect, guys. This is a franchise that obviously has so many accolades, so many different awards that this series and franchise has won, and obviously been nominated for, and has sold millions upon millions of copies, and people absolutely love this franchise. Reminds me of like a franchise like Halo that is just has a significant, very close following, and people in the community are just yearning for more Mass Effect. And obviously what looked to be a pretty promising game, that being Mass Effect Andromeda, ended up turning into some, significant problems, which we'll talk about here. But the big question is, guys, is what happened to Mass Effect? A franchise that obviously was consistently over time just going up on this incline, a community that was growing, flourishing, and then all of a sudden Andromeda comes out and it poses some significant problems for the franchise, and now we got to wonder, where are they going from here? So let's talk about it. So guys, obviously Mass Effect Andromeda is probably the biggest reason why there are question marks around this franchise now. The reception of it upon release, the Microsoft Windows and PlayStation 4 versions of Mass Effect Andromeda received mixed or average reviews, while the Xbox One version received generally favorable reviews from video game publications, according to review aggregator Metacritic. The game was later ranked the 26th best of 2017 by Eurogamer. Conversely, it also received several dishonors, including worst game that we played from Giant Bomb. And now, Mass Effect Andromeda was not well received as its predecessors. In his review for Forbes, Paul Tassi depicted that Mass Effect fans would enjoy the game but prefer the original trilogy outside of perhaps the original game. Many outlets describe Mass Effect Andromeda as a disappointment, including Giant Bomb and PlayStation Lifestyle, who retrospectively ranked it as the worst or the most disappointing game of 2017. Some critics also described the game as a missed opportunity, such as Joe Judah of Game Informer, who concluded that Mass Effect Andromeda is fun and the important parts work. At the same time, I was often left looking through a haze of inconveniences and dreaming about the game it could have been. And that's how I feel about the game, guys. Dreaming of what this game could have been. You look at like the reception overall, and it's not horrible, right? But for Mass Effect, it was pretty low. On Metacritic, PC reviews 72 out of 100, PS4 71 out of 100, and Xbox One 76 out of 100. Then, of course, when you look at, Game Informer gave it an 8 out of 10, which was pretty high. GameSpot gave it 6 out of 10, IGN 7.7 out of 10. PC Gamer 80 out of 100. So when you look at that, those aren't terrible reviews. Those are good reviews. But obviously, people were thinking that Andromeda was going to be something super special, and ended up not really meeting those expectations. And so now you kind of wonder, okay, where do they go from here? Do they go back into the continuation after Mass Effect 3 making a Mass Effect 4? Where are they going to go from here? Because I'm not going to lie, guys, when I played Andromeda, I actually thought it was pretty good. I mean, I didn't think it was as good, of course, as the original games, but it had things about it that I really did like. I just think that there were a number of people out there who just didn't like this side story type of mentality with Andromeda away from the original trilogy. Now, Mass Effect Andromeda was the third best-selling game of March 2017. It led the United Kingdom in physical sales during its first 2 weeks of release. As of August, it was the 7th best-selling game of the year. However, it eventually dropped out of the year-end top 10. The game had the second best physical launch in the series after Mass Effect 3. Andromeda's digital revenues only increased by mid-single-digit percentages against 2010's Mass Effect 3, despite substantial growth in digital sales since then. Further, Andromeda on PC sold less than the 349,000 PC digital units Mass Effect 3 sold in its launch month. Prior to the release of Mass Effect Andromeda, Chief Financial Officer Blake Jorgensen projected that it would sell 3 million units before the end of March and 6 to 9 million units during its lifetime. BioWare General Manager Aaron Flynn predicted that it would sell at least 5 million copies worldwide. Wedbush securities analyst Michael Pachter estimated that Mass Effect Andromeda sold at least 2.5 million units in its opening quarter, resulting in $110 million in revenue. The closest that EA has come to noting an exact figure was in their fourth quarter of fiscal year 2017 notes for investors, which stated that $53 million of the game's net sales related to its special editions were to be captured in Q1 fiscal year 18 instead of Q4 fiscal year 17, the quarter of its release, for accounting purposes. And then during EA's Q3 fiscal year 18 earnings call on January 3rd, 2018, EA Chief Executive Officer Andrew Wilson was asked a general question about the company's non-sports titles, which had performed below expectations. As part of his answer, Wilson noted, if you look at Mass Effect Andromeda, while there was some polarizing sentiment in that franchise, it's actually performed really well, and player engagement is really strong. So look, here's the thing. What does this tell you about the future? Okay, so what happened? I think that we can all agree that Mass Effect Andromeda is kind of like what happened, okay, where it just didn't do as well as the original three. But like Fallout, which we just talked about in the last segment, this is kind of, obviously, this is a turn for the worse for the franchise with Andromeda. But at the same time, it sold really well, unlike really Fallout 76. It sold really well. Still, maybe not as good as the original three Mass Effect games, but the idea is that it still sold well. There's still a fan base here, and there's still player engagement. There's a lot of question marks whether or not they're going to make another one, but I think that, look, for every bad game, it takes one game, guys, like I said in the last segment, it takes one game for a series to turn in the wrong direction. It takes one game to turn it back in the right direction. Mass Effect 4, I think, is a game that we will probably see at some point in the foreseeable future, guys, to continue what they started with that original trilogy. The proposed sequel, although Mass Effect Andromeda was not designed with specific plans for future installments, BioWare's original intention was to continue adding to the series. However, following the game's disappointing commercial and critical reception, reports arose that BioWare Edmonton would be taking a break from the franchise to focus on their new IP, Anthem, and that BioWare Montreal would focus on other games under the EA umbrella, such as Battlefront 2, or Star Wars Battlefront 2. In August 2017, BioWare Montreal was merged with EA's Motive Studios, casting further doubt on the future of the Mass Effect franchise. However, former series creative director Casey Hudson, who departed from BioWare in 2014, but returned following Mass Effect Andromeda's release, has stated that he would like for the series to continue. So look, all I'm going to say, guys, is sure, we can talk all we want about, BioWare Edmonton was taking a break from the franchise to work on Anthem. Anthem didn't really get very good reception either. It was kind of supposed to be almost like a spiritual successor to Mass Effect, and it was a pretty big failure as well for a number of reasons. I believe that Mass Effect, guys, is still a very strong brand. Andromeda, sure, didn't get very good commercial or critical reception, but that doesn't mean that a series completely needs to just go to the wayside. If you sell enough copies and you still have a strong following, you can continue making games, but you're just going to have to take your time with it, make something that people really want, single-player experiences, multiplayer experiences, co-op experiences, and go based on the main storyline, that being like a Mass Effect 4, continuing where the third one left off. And so when we look at when can we expect maybe another a Mass Effect 4, you look at in 2007 is when the first Mass Effect came out. And then, of course, 2010 was Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 3 was a couple years later in 2012. And then Mass Effect Andromeda came out in 2017. So what this tells me, guys, is that Mass Effect Andromeda, following that, I believe that we'll probably see another Mass Effect. For those of you who are huge Mass Effect fans, I don't think that this series is dead by any stretch of the imagination. I believe that we're probably a year or two away from hearing an announcement that Mass Effect 4 is underway, and it will probably be a couple years after that when we actually get our hands on it. So don't be worried that this series is completely, dead at this point. There's a lot more question marks around a game like Fallout than there is about Mass Effect. I believe Mass Effect has a lot more gas left in the tank. Now, in an article, guys, that was written by Paul Tassi of Forbes, in case doing a massive Anthem expose wasn't enough BioWare news for the week, Kotaku's Jason Schreier has also published a follow-up about the state of Dragon Age 4, which was canceled and then rebooted in the past few years and appears to be BioWare's next main project. This is the first I've heard about BioWare getting back into Mass Effect, other than various winks and nods about the franchise from a few people over there. Now, buried in the massive story is a single line that should give BioWare fans some hope. While reporting on the Anthem story, and then in the days that followed, I learned a lot more about the current state of Dragon Age, one of BioWare's two tentpole franchises, alongside Mass Effect, which was put on ice in 2017 following the disappointing Mass Effect Andromeda, but has since been warmed back up. So, granted, whatever is being discussed here is almost certainly years away, but it's giving players hope all the same. I'm a little confused about how BioWare, already struggling in so many ways, is going to juggle Anthem, Dragon Age, Mass Effect, and possible Star Wars games EA asked them to make, but that's an issue for another day. What I'll say right off the bat, guys, is Star Wars. I don't think EA is going to have BioWare really doing that. They're going to have Respawn doing all the Star Wars stuff moving forward. Dragon Age and Mass Effect are probably the two main games that BioWare will probably continue with. Anthem, there's always a possibility there, but because the first game didn't do well, there's really, I think that they're going to move on to greener pastures, in my opinion. When we left Mass Effect, we had just seen the universe dissolve in the wake of Mass Effect Andromeda, which wasn't a sequel in the traditional sense, but instead a game far removed from the events of the original trilogy, even if it did take place in the same universe, though not the same galaxy. The idea was clearly that this would be its own trilogy, but after poor reception and poor performance, not only were any sequels scrapped, but the game didn't even get clearly teased story DLC. It was just nuked with only a few sporadic multiplayer updates once the major fixes were in place. So look, all I'm going to say is that I think that when there was a little bit of some bad reception on Andromeda, everybody just started piling in and basically just creating this negative energy around the game. Guys, look, Andromeda was not as good as the original 3, but I still don't, I think people went a little bit overboard with this game. This was not like a Fallout 76 situation. I think that Andromeda, sure, it was a step in the wrong direction, but I don't think that it was a terrible game by any stretch of the imagination. I think what they were really going for, I actually think was a smart idea, was kind of expanding the universe a little bit, trying to kind of do things in other galaxies, trying to just expand the lore and the story of Mass Effect. But obviously it just didn't hit well, and now that they know that, it's like, okay, they gotta go back to like that original trilogy. They're not gonna be able to do a trilogy based on Andromeda. I don't think anyone is asking for an Andromeda sequel. I like the game more than most and would be curious to see of its plot lines resolved, and yet I think that entire sub-universe is just too tainted at this point to have the glorious return of Mass Effect be Andromeda 2. As for other options, things are a bit murky. Originally, Andromeda was going to be a prequel about the first contact war between humans and Turians, but fans didn't seem interested in that, and that still doesn't sound amazing given that I think most people want new stories to be told. And then the problem is that continuing Shepard's story, or at least what happens after Shepard's story ends, is tricky given the multiple choice endings of the original trilogy that were so controversial at the time. Controlling the Reapers, destroying the Reapers, or synthesizing all organic and synthetic life result in drastically different outcomes for the universe. I'll bet things we only saw play out in short cutscenes. So where would BioWare go from here? It feels like they would have to pick up an ending, say that it's canon and just move on. Shepard did this, the universe is like this now, here's a new story. I don't think we can expect them to carry through choices we made in a trilogy that started 12 years ago, probably 15 plus by the time this game comes out. So I think fans should be willing to compromise if it means revisiting the same galaxy and possible some of the same characters again. And look, guys, I agree with this overall. What I'll say is that I wish Andromeda did well. I know a lot of people wish that the game did well because I would have actually liked to see a continuation of it. I'm kind of one of probably the few that would like to see a continuation of Andromeda because I think it had some good ideas. It just didn't land well for everybody in the community. So where do they go from here? I don't want them to continue with Shepard and such and what's canon, what's not canon. I think it would be interesting to get some closure there. But at the same time, I think that they should go, a number of years into the future and just say at the very beginning of Mass Effect 4, 20 years later or after what happened in Mass Effect 3. And then kind of go from there. And you start off as a new character completely and explain things. Maybe it's a character from Andromeda, or maybe it's like a different character from the Mass Effect trilogy. It'll be interesting, but I do think they need to move on from Shepard and they need to kind of, go into a new direction, so to speak, even though Andromeda was going in that new direction, but it was such a different direction because it was on another galaxy and all of that. Maybe coming back to where things feel a little more familiar for Mass Effect fans, that would be a little bit better. But I'd like to hear from you guys. What do you guys think in the comment section below as far as what you guys think happened to Mass Effect? Was it Andromeda? Was it something else? Where do you guys think Mass Effect is going moving forward, and what would you guys want to see in Mass Effect 4? Let me know in the comment section below. And for more Mass Effect content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. A game that many people are really anticipated for is Godfall, a game, guys, that is going to be, of course, exclusively on the PlayStation 5 and a launch title for the PS5. So let's talk about everything that we know so far about this game, and then we can talk about it. So in an article, guys, that was written by Jordan Oloman of Games Radar, given that Godfall is one of the first games to be announced for the next generation of PlayStation consoles, we thought it'd be a good idea to pin down everything we know about the title so far, this new ARPG coming to the PS5 and PC later this year. So first announced during the Game Awards in 2019, Godfall is being developed by Counterplay Games and will be published by Gearbox. Counterplay is yet to reveal when the game will launch, but there has been a general release window provided, holiday of 2020. This means that the game will likely launch in the later months of the year. Between September and December of this year would be a solid rough estimate, and definitely in line with the PS5's own holiday 2020 release. Previously, Counterplay worked on Duelist, a digital CCG that was published by Bandai Namco, and tried to draft tabletop strategy in depth into the card game fold. It's a visually striking game with a strong following. Now, initially, a 6-second loop of gameplay made it onto Twitter and Reddit, but this leak quickly gave way to something more in January when an internal trailer from Counterplay started circling online. The short clip is from early 2019 and presents content that is not yet final, but importantly gave us an extended look at how the game looks and plays. The environments shown depict ancient ruins, enchanted forests, and mountains in the sky. It looks like, as well as sword swinging, you'll be able to imbue attacks with elements like fire and electricity. So look, guys, this is a game that looks really intriguing. I think from a number of aspects, that being the graphics, and it looks like it's going to be somewhat either semi or fully open world. And the thing that's very interesting to me about it is, and the question I have, is how is this game going to do against other games that are coming out around the holidays? So, like the Halo Infinite, and of course you have Call of Duty coming out every year. You have a number of different titles that are going to be coming out later this year. How is this game going to do when, of course, with everything going on in our world right now, people are probably going to be very aware and very specific about the things that they're picking up, especially when we're talking about video games. So the question is with Godfall, how is this going to do as far as, when we're talking about sales and such, let alone critical reception? But from what we've seen so far, it does look like a very, at least, intriguing and visually stunning game. Now, in an interview with PlayStation Lifestyle, Godfall creative director Keith Lee spoke about the inspirations behind the world of Godfall and how the story fits together. The game was inspired by novel series like the Stormlight Archive and is Isaac Asimov's Foundation franchise. Dwelling further on the story, Lee revealed a basic premise for Godfall in the same interview. The world is split up into the realms of earth, water, air, fire, and spirit, explains Lee. You'll play as one of the last remnants of an exalted knight's order, intent on stopping the apocalypse and preserving the last vestiges of their world. In our own interview for Games Radar Big in 20 series, Lee dwelled further on the setting of the game. It's a co-op looter-shooter experience set in a more serious and brand new fantasy world filled with heroic knights and ancient magic. Now, it's co-op. I'm hoping, though, guys, that we get to, there's a single-player experience here, too. It's not just co-op. And I also hope that they have, some multiplayer, elements to it as well. Described as a looter shooter on the official website, Godfall seeks to meld the gameplay of games like Dark Souls and God of War with the progression systems and loot mechanics of games like Borderlands and The Division. Combat is achieved via third-person melee battles, and you can play with up to 3 other heroes in co-op. Taking on gigantic armored beasts is also easier with as many swords as possible. It looks like you'll be able to parry and riposte in battle according to the clips we've seen so far, with scripted enemy animations that can catch you off guard. Combat scenarios will range from games of cat and mouse with particularly dangerous enemies to group encounters and more stoic boss fights. The boss fights are something that I'm really interested in because of what we've seen so far about these massive creatures that you're going to be going up against. The boss battles are probably going to be something to withhold, guys. Now, given that the game is dropping in Q4 of 2020, right around the release of next-generation consoles, you might expect the game to be cross-generation, available to play on PS4. Unfortunately, this isn't the case, and Godfall will be exclusive to the PS5 upon launch, with a separate PC release on the Epic Games Store. The exclusivity policy could be timed, in which case the game might land on Xbox Series X in the future, but as of right now, it will only be available on PC and the PS5 on launch. I feel like Godfall is one of those games, guys, that sure, you're taking a chance making it just be on one console, that being on the PS5, and then of course, PC. I feel like this is a game that very well, it might be like Gears of War, where Gears of War, when that first came out on the Xbox 360, it did really well, and that might be the same thing with Godfall, but at the same time, you're taking a real chance here, because if it's on PS5 as well as the Xbox Series X right off the bat, it's probably going to sell a lot more copies, at least in my opinion. So that'll be something very interesting as well to kind of keep track of, guys, as we move forward. But overall, guys, this is what we know so far about this game. We know limited information because we haven't gotten, tons and tons of information at this point. But a co-op looter shooter, the gameplay trailer, as well as, everything that we've been told so far about the game, it looks very intriguing, to say the least. And it looks like a game that could become a very popular, game on PlayStation, a very new IP that could blow up. It could absolutely be the next big franchise for PlayStation. But I would love to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about Godfall at this point? Even though we haven't seen all the information, sounds like it's going to be coming out here holiday of 2020 with the PlayStation 5. And the big question to me is what all is this going to include? Is this just a story-based game? Is it also going to be multiplayer modes? We obviously have co-op modes, but is there going to be any multiplayer? And is this story going to be also a single-player experience, or is it only going to be co-op? Those are real questions that I think need to be answered for us to get a further assessment and really figure out how we feel about this game. But overall, guys, I'm very intrigued so far about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comment section below. And for more Godfall content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. And with that being said, everyone, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of the 8 Below Show. And if you guys did, leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, stay positive, and as always, I'll talk to you guys all in the next one. Peace.